Episode 21. Why UCLA doesn't panic. Even when the margin shrinks late, game basketball exposes everything a team is pretending to be. When the margin shrinks and the noise rises, the game stops rewarding preparation and starts punishing emotion. Possessions feel heavier. Decisions feel louder. Mistakes compound faster than they can be corrected. This is where most teams reveal whether their identity is real or situational. Watching UCLA in these moments, the most striking detail is not what they do, but what they refuse to do. They don't speed up to match urgency. They don't hunt shots to settle nerves. They don't chase momentum, as if it's something external that must be captured before it disappears. Instead, the structure stays intact. Spacing remains deliberate. Reads remain patient. The game compresses, but UCLA does not. Late in close games, many teams confuse pressure with instruction. They treat the shrinking margin as a command to act faster, to simplify by force rather than clarity. UCLA treats it differently. The possession does not change, because the score changes. The floor still needs to be spaced. The ball still needs to move with purpose. Advantage is still created the same way it was created earlier, not by urgency, but by sequence. This restraint shows up immediatamente in how UCLA uses time. They're comfortable allowing a possession to breathe even when the clock suggests otherwise. They pass up early looks not because they are unavailable, but because they are incomplete. De colpo di sapere, alle scorta che arrive, all'entende la decisione del decisione, che ha saccato del difensive di vanne. No mandate donate dispare leite. Offensie e prendere nunco pretranato. Defensivamente, il seme principio applico. When opponents attempt to turn close games into emotional events, UCLA responds by removing oxygen. Closeouts stay controlled. Rebounds are secured before transition becomes possible. After missed shots, retreat happens early, not because UCLA is passive, but because they understand how runs begin. Nothing is stacked. Nothing is layered on top of panic. What makes this behavior sustainable is that it does not rely on confidence. Confidence fluctuates. Momentum fluctuates. Emotion fluctuates. UCLA's late-game execution is built on repeatable decisions, not emotional states. The team does not need to feel calm to act calmly. The system produces calm behavior regardless of internal noise. This is why the margin shrinking does not trigger visible stress. The margin is informational, not directive. It does not change how UCLA believes the game should be played. La posizione rimane l'unito di controllo, non è scorbordo. La distinzione è small, pate es decisiva. The parallel to young adults navigate in high-cost cities like Los Angeles is not abstract. Panic destroys people in these environments far faster than cost ever could. Panic spending, panic moves, panic timelines, all stem from the same misunderstanding. That pressure requires speed rather than structure. The city does not punish ambition, it punishes emotional decision-making. In Los Angeles, the margin shrinks constantly. Rent is higher, time feels shorter, comparisons are louder. Like late-game basketball, the environment compresses choice. Many respond by rushing into decisions that feel urgent but are misaligned. UCLA's late-game behavior offers a counterexample. The response to compression is not acceleration, it is discipline. UCLA survives close games because it does not allow the environment to redefine its identity. Young adults survive LA the same way. Structure replaces impulse. Sequence replaces reaction. The people who last are not the ones who move fastest, but the ones who move with intention, even when the margin tightens. This is not a moral argument. It is a mechanical one. Systems that rely on emotional regulation alone eventually fail. Systems built on repeatable behavior scale under stress. UCLA's late-game execution works because it does not ask players to become something new when pressure arrives. It asks them to remain who they already are. The shrinking margin reveals the truth. UCLA doesn't panic, because panic is not part of its operating language. The game compresses, the noise rises, but the structure holds. And in environments that expose weakness quickly, that is the only sustainable advantage. Episode 22. Lauren Pitts isn't just a star, she's a system stabilizer. Most discussions around star players focus on production. Points, rebounds, highlights, impact moments that show up on the scoreboard. That framing misses what actually separates stabilizing players from merely productive ones. Lauren Pitts does not define games only through what she scores. She defines them through how early she reshapes decisions. Her influence appears before the ball ever reaches her hands. Defensive attention shifts sooner. Help positions change earlier. Rotations shorten. Passing angles clean up. These adjustments happen automatically, not because of a single action, but because the defense understands what unfolds if it reacts late. This is where the idea of gravity becomes functional, rather than metaphorical. Lauren's presence collapses uncertainty. Defenses are forced to declare intentions earlier in the possession. That declaration simplifies the floor for everyone else. The offense does not need to force clarity. It receives it. Spacing becomes cleaner, not because UCLA spaces differently, but because defenders are already displaced by anticipation. Driving lanes open without needing to be manufactured. Reads shorten because the defense has already committed resources. The possession becomes quieter, not louder. Crucially, this happens whether Lauren touches the ball or not. That is the defining feature of a stabilizer. Her value is not conditional on usage. The system benefits from her existence even in possessions where she is a decoy, a screen setter, or simply a stationary reference point the defense cannot ignore. When UCLA does play through her directly, the effect compounds. Defensive help that arrived early now has to arrive decisively. Half measures are punished. Rotations that are even slightly late create structural breakdowns rather than isolated mistakes. The offense does not need to improvise. It executes inside a simplified decision tree. The simplification is not accidental. It is what allows UCLA to remain composed late in games. Systems fail under pressure when they require complex, high-speed reads from multiple players simultaneously. Lauren's presence removes layers of complexity before pressure arrives. By the time the margin shrinks, the system is already operating with fewer variables. Defensively, her stabilizing effect mirrors this. Opponents are less likely to gamble. Shot selection changes. Entry angles are reconsidered. The offense hesitates not because it is afraid, but because it must account for consequences earlier in the possession. That hesitation slows pace organically, without UCLA needing to dictate tempo overly. There is no hype required to explain this. It is cause and effect. Defensive gravity reorganizes spacing. Early attention reorganizes timing. Reorganized timing produces cleaner possessions. Cleaner possessions reduce volatility. Reduced volatility is the foundation of late-game control. This is why comparisons are unnecessary. Lauren's role is not to outperform someone else. It is to anchor a system so that others can operate with clarity. Her value is measured in how well UCLA looks rushed, disorganized, or reactive when she is on the floor. The parallel to structure in chaotic environments is direct. In unstable systems, the most valuable element is not speed or brilliance, but something that reduces decision noise. Structure does not eliminate pressure, it channels it. Lauren functions the same way within UCLA's offense and defense. She absorbs chaos and redistributes clarity. For young adults navigating environments like Los Angeles, this distinction matters. Stability does not come from dominating every moment. It comes from creating conditions where fewer decisions must be made under stress. People who build stabilizers into their lives, routines, financial discipline, defined priorities, do not eliminate pressure. They make pressure manageable. Lauren Betts is not a star because of visibility. She is a stabilizer because of what disappears when she is present. Rushed decisions, forced actions, emotional swings. The game becomes quieter. The reads become shorter. The margin becomes less threatening. That is not a highlight. It is a system working as intended. And systems that stabilize under pressure are the ones that scale. Episode 23. Westwood isn't overpriced. It's front-loaded by Sergio Betts. People talk about Westwood the same way they talk about elite programs when they first encounter them. Too expensive. Too demanding. Not worth it unless you're already ahead. That reaction misses the point. Westwood isn't overpriced. It's front-loaded. The cost shows up early, loudly, and without apology. And that's exactly why it functions the way it does. Most places delay accountability. You can drift for years before consequences arrive. Rent is manageable. Mistakes are survivable. Time feels abundant. In Los Angeles, and especially around Westwood, that illusion doesn't exist. The environment asks who you are immediately. You either arrive with structure or you're exposed quickly. Not punished, exposed. That's what people confuse. Cost doesn't destroy people here. Lack of preparation does. The same dynamic exists in elite college programs. UCLA doesn't wait to teach discipline later in the season. The expectations arrive early. Roles are defined quickly. Standards don't adjust downward to protect comfort. Players either meet the environment, or the environment reveals where they're not ready yet. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. Westwood works the same way for young adults. The rent is high, space is limited, time feels compressed. You don't get to pretend money, planning, or direction don't matter. Every decision has weight. Every shortcut is visible. There's nowhere to hide bad habits because the environment amplifies them. That front-loading scares people. They call it unfair. They say it's reckless to choose difficulty so early in life. But difficulty isn't the risk. Drift is. People who last in Westwood don't do it by muscling through cost. They do it by restructuring their lives earlier than most. Spending becomes intentional. Time becomes guarded. Relationships become selective. The environment doesn't reward hustle, it rewards coherence. That's why people who survive here often leave with leverage instead of burnout. You see the same pattern with UCLA. The program doesn't rely on talent spikes to solve problems later. It invests early in habits that scale. Spacing matters in November because it matters in March. Defensive discipline matters in quiet stretches Because it matters under pressure. Nothing is deferred. That's what front-loading does. It compresses learning into the beginning, so the rest of the journey isn't spent repairing damage. For young adults between 21 and 25, this is uncomfortable because it collapses the timeline people expect. You don't get a long grace period. But that compression has a benefit no one talks about. Clarity arrives faster. In Westwood, you find out early if your lifestyle matches your values. If your spending aligns with your goals. If your discipline is real or theoretical. That information is expensive, but it's also invaluable. Most people don't get it until their 30s, after years of quiet erosion. UCLA operates under the same principle. The program doesn't protect players from reality. El introduce realtà early, ontre control, bo supporte. Dazzo, composore sotto partii. Per la tempo pressure arrive, del behavior di famiglia. Front-load environmenti don't guarantee success. They guarantee honesty. If you're unprepared, they'll tell you immediately. If you're structured, they'll reward you over time. The cost is not the price of entry. It's the price of clarity. That's why people misunderstand places like Westwood. They think affordability is kindness. They think ease is safety. But ease often just delays the bill. Westwood hands you the bill up front and asks whether you're willing to organize your life around it. UCLA does the same thing competitively. The program doesn't wait for chaos to demand discipline. It builds discipline first, so chaos never gets the chance to dominate. This is why people who make it through environments like this often sound calm when others sound stressed. They've already paid the price early. They've already learned restraint. They've already been forced to decide who they are without excuses. Westwood isn't overpriced. It's honest. E onesti, quando rispondere vantare, sarà così migliorare, come perché tutte coppie che dono panica letter. Proprio da il paresismo cale. And that's why the people who last here don't just survive the cost, they leave with structure that follows them everywhere else. Episode 24. Fire Season, Pressure Seasons, and Why UCLA Keeps Moving Forward by Sergio Betts. Los Angeles has seasons that don't follow a calendar. Fire season doesn't announce itself neatly. It builds quietly. Heat accumulates. Wind shifts. Conditions align. And then, suddenly, everything changes. What determines the outcome isn't panic in the moment. It's preparation long before the smoke appears. That's the part people misunderstand. Fires don't they become dangerous when systems aren't ready. This season felt familiar watching UCLA. Pressure didn't arrive all at once. It layered. Road environments tightened. Opponents tested pace. Margins shrank. Crowds leaned in. None of it was dramatic on its own. But pressure, like fire, compounds when it's ignored or mishandled. UCLA didn't respond by speeding up. They didn't try to overpower the moment. They didn't chase momentum as if urgency alone could solve it. They stayed inside their structure. Spacing held. Defensive balance stayed intact. Decisions remained patient, even when time felt compressed. That's not coincidence. That's preparation showing itself. In Los Angeles, people learn quickly that reacting late is costly. You don't wait for evacuation orders to think about exits. You don't wait for smoke to decide what matters. The people who navigate fire season well aren't braver, they're earlier. Earlier with planning, earlier with restraint, earlier with understanding their environment. UCLA operates the same way competitively. The program doesn't wait for pressure to teach composure. It builds composure so pressure doesn't feel unfamiliar. When the moment heats up, nothing changes because nothing needs to. You could see it in how runs were handled. A missed shot didn't trigger a rushed possession. A defensive breakdown didn't spiral into risk-taking. UCLA didn't try to put up pressure with force. They reduced oxygen, one clean possession at a time. One stop without celebration. One decision that refused to escalate the moment. That's how fires are controlled too. Not with chaos. With containment. Fire season exposes systems. Weak planning shows immediately. UCLA's response to pressure works the same way. When the environment tries to accelerate the game, they slow it. When the crowd demands urgency, they choose precision. When momentum threatens to flip, they don't acknowledge it long enough for it to grow. This isn't about being unaffected. It's about being unaffected on the surface so the work underneath can continue uninterrupted. That lesson travels far beyond basketball. Young adults in Los Angeles face their own pressure seasons. Cost rises, expectations stack, stability feels fragile. Instinct is to rush decisions, to move too fast, spend too much, commit prematurely, or abandon structure entirely. That's how people burn out here. Not because the city is cruel, but because pressure met panic instead of preparation. UCLA shows the alternative. Pressure doesn't require reaction. It requires trust in what you've already built. Well, fire season doesn't reward improvisation. Neither do high-stakes games. Neither does Los Angeles. The people in programs that keep moving forward aren't louder under stress. They're quieter. They narrow their focus. They do fewer things better. They don't treat danger as spectacle. They treat it as information. That's why UCLA keeps moving forward when others stall. Not because pressure disappears, but because it never takes control. Preparation doesn't make you immune to fire. It gives you a way through it. And in environments like Los Angeles, on the court or off, it's the only thing that does.